Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I am super thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack one of the absolute biggest misconceptions about our modern digital world. When we load up a website or stream a 4K video or even execute a high-frequency stock trade, we rarely stop to think about the physical path that data actually takes. Well, today we're putting outer space head-to-head with the deep blue sea to answer a pretty fascinating question. Why does the global internet depend on underwater cables instead of satellites? Trust me, the answer is going to blow your mind. Okay, let's just dive right in by asking a super simple question. Where does the cloud actually live? I mean, because our phones and laptops are completely wireless, we kind of naturally assume that all this data is just bouncing around up there in the atmosphere, zipping between satellites and cell towers, right? We even talk about data being in the air. But the reality of our global network is surprisingly physical, and it is overwhelmingly tethered to the Earth. Just look at the international data capacity for the United States. A completely staggering 99.63% of it travels through undersea cables. Satellites, they handle a tiny 0.37%. Honestly, that is a massive paradigm shift if you thought space was running the show. Nearly all intercontinental data traffic, which is basically the entire backbone of our global digital economy, is completely submerged deep underwater, not orbiting above our heads. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of what we are actually talking about here. Worldwide, there are over 400 subsea cables spanning more than 1.2 million kilometers. To put that into perspective, that is literally enough cable to wrap around the equator about 30 times. It's this vast, super intricate web just resting on the ocean floor, physically wiring our continents together. Section 1. The Invisible Underwater Internet. Let's actually look at the physics behind how these deep-sea data highways function. Like, how is it even possible that millions of people can communicate at the exact same time through a tube at the bottom of the ocean? Well, to break it down simply, these aren't just big, chunky copper wires. They actually contain hundreds of ultra-pure glass fiber optic strands, and each one is only about the thickness of a human hair. Inside each strand, we can send several different colors or wavelengths of light all at the exact same time without them interfering with each other at all. And each of those colors, they can blink several billion times a second to transmit digital ones and zeros. Plus, since light does lose some strength over thousands of miles, we use signal repeaters along the cable to boost it up, making sure it arrives perfectly clear on the other side of the world. Now, you might be wondering, with millions of people using it all at once, doesn't our data get totally mixed up? Actually, no, not at all. It operates exactly like a global postal service. All your data gets split up into these tiny little pieces called IP packets, and every single packet has an origin address and a destination address attached to it. The cable itself is just the highway. It really doesn't care what the data is. The equipment on either end sorts the whole shebang out, or rather, it reads those addresses and forwards everything to the right person, totally independently. Section 2. Cables versus satellites showdown. So, knowing how cables work, why haven't satellites, which seem way more advanced, just replaced them by now? Well, when we compare them head-to-head, a very clear winner emerges for bulk data transfer. Submarine cables can carry tens to hundreds of terabits per second. A satellite, it totally maxes out in the gigabits. Then there's longevity. Cables have an incredibly long lifespan of about 25 years, whereas satellites only survive about 5 to 10 years in the super harsh environment of space. And oh, the cost. You can lay an entire undersea cable for $100 to $500 million. Building a massive satellite constellation is going to run you anywhere from $5 to over $10 billion. So yeah, cables vastly outperform satellites in longevity, upfront investment, and raw capacity. No contest. Moving on to Section 3, the speed of light. We really have to look at how latency and physical distance impact our daily internet experience. So the crucial point is the actual physical distance the signal has to travel. A trans-Pacific fiber optic call goes about 5,000 miles straight across the ocean floor. But a traditional geostationary satellite, that sits way, way up in space. The signal has to travel 22,235 miles up to the satellite, and then another 22,235 miles all the way back down. That is an unavoidable round trip of over 44,000 miles. Even traveling at the literal speed of light, that massive distance creates a physical delay. And you can see exactly how that distance translates into real-world lag. Sending a data packet from the US to Japan via submarine fiber takes about 120 milliseconds. Sending that exact same packet via a geostationary satellite takes 650 milliseconds.
Now, a quarter to half-second delay might not sound like a huge deal to you and me, but for live news broadcasts, or competitive online gaming, or modern cloud apps, that lag is a massive, highly frustrating problem.
Which brings us to Section 4, Economics and Data Capacity. Let's look at the raw physics that really cement the dominance of fiber optics. This number right here is absolutely staggering. The cost to transmit data, specifically the cost per gigabit month, for a submarine cable is about 1,000 times lower than for a low Earth orbit satellite. Let that sink in. When you're moving the entire world's digital economy, being 1,000 times cheaper is just an unbeatable advantage. And a huge chunk of that cost efficiency comes down to power loss. Check this out. If you send a 2-watt signal from New York to London through a contained, highly pure glass fiber, it degrades to about 1 milliwatt by the time it arrives. But if you radiate that exact same 2-watt signal into the vastness of space toward a satellite, well, spherical spreading means you only capture a microscopic fraction of a milliwatt. Basically, radiating signals out into space is just incredibly inefficient compared to neatly guiding light through a glass tube. Because of that crazy efficiency, the sheer volume of data these optical fibers can handle is almost beyond comprehension. A single fiber optic cable can transmit 1 petabit per second. That's 1,000,000 gigabits. In fact, the carrying capacity is so ridiculously vast that many fiber cables resting on the ocean floor right now are actually dark, meaning they aren't even actively being used yet. Why? Because humanity literally doesn't generate enough internet traffic to fill them all. How wild is that? But it's not all perfect. Section 5, Vulnerabilities and Hidden Threats. Because every superhero has a kryptonite, right? And these physical lifelines face constant danger. Because they are physical cables just laying there on the seabed, they are super vulnerable. They get snagged by totally mundane things like fishing equipment and dragging ship anchors. They get damaged by underwater earthquakes and landslides. And, increasingly, there are very real concerns about intentional sabotage, like the 10 different cable disruptions we've seen in the Baltic Sea just since 2022. Plus, when a cable snaps in the freezing, pitch-black depths of the ocean, it is not a quick fix. You need specialized chips, and it takes anywhere from 7 to 21 days just to repair it. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the severe, cascading national impact these cuts have. Just looking at the May 2024 disruptions of the Seacom and ASSI subsea cables, we saw network connectivity absolutely plunge across multiple African nations. Because countries rely so heavily on these single points of failure, a cut cable doesn't just mean your Netflix buffers a bit, it can mean a severe nationwide digital blackout. And if you're thinking, well, just fall back on wireless networks, it's not that simple. When 2 submarine cables connecting Taiwan and the Matsu Islands were damaged in early 2023, a backup microwave system was activated. But that wireless backup only managed to restore an estimated 5% of the original bandwidth. 5%. When cables fail, wireless backups are often entirely insufficient to support a modern economy. Which leads us perfectly into Section 6, a synergistic future. If cables are vulnerable but satellites lack capacity, where does that actually leave us?
Well, satellites, particularly the newer low Earth orbit or LEO constellations like Starlink, they have incredible strengths of their own. They are absolutely perfect for reaching landlocked countries, providing emergency redundancy during natural disasters, and supporting maritime ops where cables obviously just can't reach. And fascinatingly, for certain ultra-long-distance routes, a LEO satellite network bouncing signals with lasers through the vacuum of space can actually beat fiber optic latency by a few milliseconds. That makes it incredibly valuable for things like high-frequency financial trading, where literally every millisecond counts.
As the researchers at Exona Partners put it, LEO satellites present a greenfield play that complements the role of submarine cables, and that perfectly summarizes our current reality. Rather than trying to destroy or replace one another, these 2 technologies are actually forming a heavily interconnected super infrastructure. Submarine cables handle the heavy, bulk lifting of the global internet, while satellites extend that reach out to the edges of the Earth and provide crucial, agile backups. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to consider here. Our entire modern civilization, trillions of dollars in commerce, global security, our personal lives, relies on this incredibly fragile, interconnected web of cables and satellites. Yet, much of it exists out in international waters or the vastness of orbit, completely outside of strict sovereign control. So how do we effectively map, regulate, and protect critical infrastructure that is hidden in the darkest, most unmonitored domains of our planet in space? It is a massive challenge for the next generation of global security. I really hope this explainer has given you a whole new appreciation for the hidden physical reality of our internet.